If you're over 50 and looking to build a strong, stable core that won't wreck your joints, this is the place to start. I'm going to show you 8 isometric exercises that will support the 4 cardinal planes in the trunk and spine. These exercises are simple, they're easy to follow, they're joint friendly, and they will help you to build strong foundational strength. Welcome to the Joint Longevity Lab by Fitness Integrated Science. My name is Lauren Irk, and today I'd like to go over 8 essential isometric exercises that I have given my clients for years, especially those that are unsure how to get back to strengthening their core after years of disuse. Now, many people jump into core training way too fast with excessive speed, not knowing how their body actually works, and adding load way too fast. That's why I've always said isometrics, positional isometrics, are the way to go. So for the first isometric phase, I want to start with addressing the motion of rotation. Rotation is one of the most important things that we can learn to do and to hone in our trunk and spine. It is the foundation of everything that we do in the human body. Now I'm going to come on down to the floor for this exercise. If you're unable to come to the floor, please feel free to do this on top of your bed, or maybe you have a massage table in your house. You can follow right along. These exercises are not for everyone. If you've been diagnosed with osteoporosis or some severe spinal disorder, you may want to check with your doctor before attempting some of these general exercises. I want to begin with a flexed position at the knees, and the reason for this is to bring that lumbar curve down to the floor. And for those of you with a stiff lower back, this is immediately going to feel a whole lot more comfortable when you're in a supine position. Now, on your exhalation breath, what you're going to notice is that lower back will automatically start to drop into the ground. This is an important aspect of core training because this brings in our abdominal muscles. Now, when we think about spinal stabilization and core training, rotation comes in right away when we add one limb at a time. So let's start by just picking up one of our extremities. I'm just going to pick up this leg. I'm going to try stacking my knee directly over the top of the hips. Now this isometric, you can see the weight of the leg is pulling me this way. So by having that leg up, I'm already training a lot of my rotational muscles. As you hold this here, if it feels like it's too much, feel free to bring your leg back into the center. We don't necessarily want to train hip flexion right now. We're trying to keep the core stable on the ground. So we're going to hold this for about 5 to 6 seconds and then releasing it. Always pay attention to what happened on one side of the body. Then when you pick up the other side, notice if you feel a little heavier, if you feel a little shakier, if you feel weaker, this is going to tell you what you need to work on in terms of core strengthening and progressing through a lot of the different challenges that you might be aware of. As you exhale, let's lower that all the way down. Now for the next phase, after doing that for a period of time, as you pick up this leg, you want to take the opposite shoulder now and start lifting it off the ground. Now the weight of this part of my body, I'm just already initiating that motion of the rib cage shifting towards the pelvis. That already is going to bring in some of those rotational muscles, breathing gently, and then exhale, coming back down and releasing. Remember, you should never be cramping or shaking during these exercises. Changing sides again, let's pick up that leg, feel that positional isometric. Then on your exhale, take the opposite shoulder and start raising it off the ground. Holding that there, focus on drawing the rib to the opposite hip, tightening into the abdominal wall, breathing gently. And then inhale, coming back down, lower the leg to the floor. Now let's add one more component, and these can happen over a period of weeks, months, whatever you need. Picking up that leg, take a deep breath in. If you like, add that second challenge by adding the opposite shoulder coming off the floor. Then I'm just going to bring my arm up to touch the leg. You may have to bring your leg closer in. You may need an object here if your arm doesn't reach. But I want you to very lightly feel that rotational stress trying to target muscles in the abdomen and trying to diminish inner groin involvement here. And then exhale, bring that down. One more time, exhale, lower back on the floor, already tightening. Take the opposite shoulder up and then add that arm. So as we hold this here, our goal is to try to squeeze these muscles in our core trying to maintain this position, breathing gently. And then inhale, we come right back down. Now, over time, if you feel really good about your back, you can start extending that opposite knee. Now, what this does is it eliminates this leg's ability to help, right? So now when I start to just isolate lifting this hip off the floor, it's going to be even harder for me not to squeeze this glute and push this leg into the floor. So as I come up with that shoulder, bring in the hand to the knee, I add that little lift. You can tell that you're picking up a lot more load. Holding and breathing, no shaking and cramping. And release it. Now, if you're at home and you're doing this, pulling yourself across, that is not what I'm asking. This is an active isometric. So you can see on camera, I'm just barely able to lift this hip off the floor if I'm not using this leg. I'm pushing lightly with the shoulder. This arm is coming across and I'm rotating. I'm focused on tightening into this core, hold and breathing, and relax. Now, as you're going through those exercises, you want to hold those anywhere from 6 to 8 seconds, doing them 5 to 10 times in a row. And if you find that you're exhausted after doing that, that may be enough for today. For the second exercise, I want to move into a little bit more of a sitting exercise. So I'm just going to place a mini ball behind my back, kind of rolling back into it. If you don't have one of those, no big deal. You can just take a pillow and just kind of fold it in half. But if you notice, when I put this behind the back, I'm just going to kind of move up into it and then sit halfway on it so that ball really does wedge in place. Now, when we're doing rotational exercises, I know a lot of people might say, I can't do this with my legs out in front of me. You can mitigate that by bending your knees. But the most important thing whenever you're sitting up is that your spine stays straight. You're going to increase spinal stress if you're rounded, don't have good posture, and then you try to rotate. So sitting rotations can be stressful for that reason. Therefore, I'm just going to use that ball to try to support some of the weight of my body, lifting my upper body away from the ball. From there, I'm just going to rise up into my chest and sternum, and I'm feeling muscles in my back. From here, I'm just going to lean back into the ball. So already I am engaging core muscles in my abdomen. Now, moving into that rotation, I want to try to maintain that upright position. Now, if I'm rotating to this side, what you're going to feel is obliques coming from on the opposite side, such as the external obliques, internal obliques coming in from the same side, working as a unit to try to rotate me across to one side. Now, even though this is a positional isometric, I'm still bringing in spinal extensors, I'm still bringing in some hip flexors. You can't help but not to. You can also add the upper extremities if you want to, holding that, and then back to the center. Now, I was talking a long time. We held that a long time. I wouldn't advise doing that, especially if this is your first time going through. So as you exhale, sitting up nice and tall first, we lean back. And you can see the further you go back, the heavier it gets. So I would definitely start by going more upright. So now as I come into that rotation, adding that extension through my upper body, I'm just going to hold that here, breathing gently, holding for about 6 seconds. And if you start to cramp, I would come up a little bit. Then we're just going to bring that out of the picture and come back. As you get stronger with this exercise, you can take the ball or the pillow, move it further up the back, and you see what it's allowing me to do. It's allowing me to challenge one part of the range as I start to turn and rotate, as long as I can do this without cramping or shaking, and as long as I can do this without rounding into my back. You can go from side to side holding that, or you can stop between those two sides and come into a rest. Much more advanced than the exercise we did on the floor, which is why I wanted to show both of those together. Now, for the next plane of motion, this is exercise number 3. I want to move into the plane of motion called flexion. This is done in the sagittal plane, primarily through the rectus abdominis and the psoas minor. So now I'm just going to bring my chair into the mix here. And the reason I'm doing this is to try to minimize as much of my hip flexor stress as possible, even though I know they're going to kick in some. So bringing your legs up onto a support, that can be a stability ball, a piece of furniture, whatever it is that you need, or you can just put your feet flat on the floor. I want you to notice that already begins the isometric. The lower back is on the ground, which is the definition. Lumbar straightening out is spinal flexion. So on the exhalation breath, let's just start by tightening up those abdominal muscles. As we do that, we are feeling how the bottom rib on the rib cage drops down. It becomes more flush to the body, and these muscles really start to activate. Now from here on the exhalation breath, if you want to take this a step further, I'm just going to tuck the chin. That initiates that flexion that we really, really need. On your exhalation breath, I'm going to put my hands right underneath the chin, push the chin down into the hands, and attempt to raise head, neck, and shoulder off the floor. Not going up necessarily, but shifting forward. My goal here is not to lift my torso, but to draw the ribs to the hips. So I'm just going to come into that position and hold that for about 5 to 6 seconds, trying to maintain that shortening as much as possible, holding, and then inhale, come all the way back out. Now, if your head position is a real big problem, that your head, the neck is the problem, then you might want to just focus on abdominal stabilization, pressing them into the floor, leaving your head down, and wait for the next exercise that I show you. One more time as we exhale to come forward, draw ribs to hips. You may notice on your second rep, you actually get more of your upper body off the floor or not. Another progression is to place your hands behind your head, which is going to support the head true, but it also adds load to these muscles down here. So notice if when you put your hands behind your head, you're able to still maintain the same amount of tension. And then exhale breath. Make sure you're resting for about 5 to 6 seconds in between repetitions. When you begin that next one, you want to exhale and flatten that lower back, drawing ribs to hips, keeping that chin tucked, holding that abdominal flexion exercise, and also trying to minimize this stress onto your legs. Now you can certainly walk your legs closer in if you like. You can bring your legs all the way in if necessary, but you're trying to isolate these muscles as much as possible. Now for exercise number 4, we're going to stay in the sagittal plane called flexion. This is what I call the reverse crunch. You probably have seen this before. One way to do this, and if you have a pillow or a ball, is just to bring your legs together and just start moving your legs into that ball. That's going to bring in your hip flexors, which you're going to need to start initiating that motion of lifting your pelvis away from the ground. So that might be step number 1. And then exhale, bring that down. Now we do have muscles that attach into the spinal column that are aside from the rectus abdominis, such as, for instance, the internal obliques that assist in reverse crunches. So as we push the arms down, try to move your thigh muscles into your chest and peel your upper body off the floor. So here's that exercise without the ball in it. It doesn't matter how far you go. Now there will be people out there that'll naturally get themselves way off the floor. That is not the purpose of this exercise. Give yourself the intention of peeling your sacrum and tailbone away from the floor, even if nothing happens. Hold that for 5 to 6 seconds and then exhale, release it. What a lot of people do whenever they're doing isometrics, they push too hard. They hurt the next day. They hurt even while they're doing it, thinking that's the way they're going to get these better. Remember, this is our first phase of muscle maintenance. We are activating weak muscles. So our force applications need to be very, very light. So if I'm doing this to try to get back up there, I am blowing past my range completely. So as we try that again, pressing down, notice my feet are very close to my legs, my thighs are very close to my chest, and I'm just holding this. I'm not shaking or cramping. I'm just tightening up through the belly, and then exhale, release it. Now, as you get stronger, we can combine exercise number 3 and 4, hands coming behind the head or into the chest, either one. Tucking the chin, we add upper and lower body. This is working against gravity, trying to perform spinal flexion. Holding that anywhere from 5 to 6 seconds. And then exhale, releasing that all the way out. So, as we move into exercise number 5, we're moving into a new plane of motion called lateral flexion. So I'm just going to stand up to show you exactly what I mean by this exercise, which we're getting ready to do on the floor. Now, if you stand up and just notice your ability to side bend, what you're going to notice is that not only is your spine bending sideways, your hips are also changing your position. One of the hips is moving, the femur bone is moving in adduction, the other hip is moving into abduction, and that's really going to be a part of spinal side bend, even though we'd like to try to eliminate it as much as possible. So what we want to do to start is push the shoulder down out of the neck, lightly press into the ball. That initiates a lot of the muscles that attach from the rib to the hip, namely the lats. From there, I actively move into side bend in one motion. Then I'm just going to move both of the legs as much as possible, both against each other as well as into the ball, with the goal of trying to create tension here in spinal side bend. Now we're going to start doing this on the ground to try to eliminate rotation. You notice if you do this sitting or standing that you'll get to a certain point where you're in side bend and then you'll add rotation, which is not a bad thing. But if we're trying to isolate this in our first phase of muscle maintenance, doing it against the ground is the best place to start. So let's give it a shot. As we come down onto our backs, we just bring both of the legs together, placing the ball right below the hand. Draw the shoulder out of the neck. From here, we go into side bend without scooting. A lot of people, they'll kind of do this, and they'll try to force themselves down. That is not what we want. In one motion, we're side bending with that shoulder coming down, and as we press the arm against the ball, we're trying to immediately start to draw sensation. The shoulder is coming down, but it's driving the ribs to the hips. Now we can very lightly, I know this is going to feel challenging, think of moving the outer leg, this leg that's facing you on the camera, out into the ball, which is hip abduction. So as we do that and we squeeze that down, we want to avoid cramping. We want to avoid shaking. So if you're too far into the position, and that's what's happening, or maybe you're trying to already start lifting one shoulder off the floor, you have gone too far. Make sure to rest a few inches out of it so that you can let that tissue calm down so that when we perform the next isometric, that it's even more smooth. And what you'll notice if you're doing it correctly and if you're doing it over a period of time, which I definitely recommend that you watch this video more than once, and over, in fact, because what you're going to notice is that your ability to do the isometric, to really isolate this tissue, it will get better and better over time. It's like anything else. You see people start exercise, they throw everything at it. Over time, as they start to hone their body's awareness, you will start to let go of other muscles and be able to isolate a whole lot better. And I saw this for many decades in teaching yoga. Trying to teach people subtlety is very, very, very challenging. So now as we inhale, we come right back out of side bend and release. Now, I'm going to show you progression, just like I've done with the other two planes of motion, that you can do as you get stronger. This is going to be an isometric that is actually working against gravity, leveraging our body weight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into side bend. This is exercise number 6. Placing the ball directly below the bottom rib. Now this is important that the support that you've used is not violating your range of motion. So hopefully you have some good information about that now. And if you don't have a lot, maybe a little sliver or a pillow is enough. Just because I'm using this doesn't mean it's appropriate for you. So what I'm going to do is basically lay over the ball. And it kind of feels like the princess and the pea. I've got this lump underneath my body, but I don't feel like it's jamming me up. And that's very important to understand. Separate your legs. I like to take the bottom leg in front, the front leg in back, so you don't have to work on your balance. These fingertips stay in front, and I'm going to leave this down on the ground. As you exhale, the goal here is going to be to work against gravity. I'm going to leave this bottom arm on the ground. Work against gravity to move the upper body up so that I can draw the rib cage down to the hip. And as I'm shortening that, I'm using the weight of my body to perform this isometric. If it's too much, come out of the position or go back to lying on your back. So we're going to hold that for about 6 seconds, then mindfully coming back out of it. Now we'll show you some progressions that we can use. As a for instance, exhale breathing, I can shift ribs to hips. I can start by placing my hand here or even lifting my arm above the floor. This is definitely going to make things harder. And then exhale, coming back down. I can even start initiating the whole thing with a long lever trying to move my arm off the floor. But if you notice, when I got here, I was able to get a lot further holding this down here. So when I added the arm, I dropped out of it quite a bit. That's something to really think about. If we want to perform isometrics for range of motion, we may have to sacrifice some of that when we start to add load. This shows up outside of isometrics as well. Now we only have 2 more exercises left, and these are going to show up in the plane of motion called extension. So for exercise number 7, I'm going to do a basic sitting exercise that can be done in a chair, but I think it's really nice to do this against a flat surface. Now, just like we did before, I'm just going to bend the knees to eliminate any stress from the pelvis getting tucked under by creating slack behind the knee. So the first thing I'm going to do is lean back into that little ball. And this is easy to do, right? I'm just slouching. This is what gravity is pushing me into all day. Now to move into extension, I have to be very mindful in the fact that I'm trying to move away from the ball by lifting through the sternum. So what you're going to notice is that this angle at your hip starts to get smaller, the hip flexors. The lower back starts to kick in. The upper thoracic spine starts to lift, and you may notice that your shoulders and head position starts to come back. Now that alone, if you can hold this upright position, for a lot of people, that is enough of an isometric for extension, 100% without a doubt. And you may have to work with this for some time. When you're finished with that, come out of position and take a break. Again, coming into the next exercise, you're here. Now obviously, there are progressions to this exercise. For instance, I could let go of my legs and just cross my arms over my chest so that when I go down into this flexed position, my arms are kind of assisting me, but now as I start to move into that thoracic extension, adding shoulder flexion is going to bring in a lot more muscles in my upper back. And then as we exhale, we come right back down. The next phase of this exercise is to try to straighten the legs, right? And that's going to obviously put some tension on some of the 2 jointed muscles that cross the knee that absolutely could be putting some strain on my lower back. And then exhale. And then finally, I could practice taking the hands behind the head, which is the hardest one of all of these variations. Now, if you've gotten to the point where you're that strong, doing this next exercise, this last exercise, should be a piece of cake. So for exercise number 8, it's going to be the prone backward bend. So what I like to do for this, because most people don't have a lot of extension, I like to have my clients lay on top of a blanket or 2, depending on what kind of range of motion that they have. All right, so as I bring this blanket right here at the top of my crease of my hip, it allows my pelvis to now sit slightly above the line of my shoulders. Take your arms beside your head, tuck your chin, separate your legs about hip width apart. Lightly pressing your hips into the floor, explore how far you can actually move your upper body off the floor. Now, if you are a sedentary person, if you've got some stenosis, it may be very challenging for you to bend backwards at all. So some people will maybe not even leave the ground. But remember, giving yourself that intention is everything. Then as you exhale, we lower that back down. Now as a progression, you can add the upper arms, and I don't want you to push into the floor, but this doesn't have as much of a counterbalance to it. So pressing your hips into the ground, I'm just going to press my arms back like I'm trying to slide my elbows down towards the hips. Now what this does is it drives the shoulders out of the neck, and it really puts a lot more emphasis into my lumbar spine, which is the primary part of the spine that performs this motion. The upper back is really just going to move more and more into a straight line. And those of you that want to add cervical, you may want to do that by lifting your chin, or you can just keep that in neutral. Then as you exhale, come right back down. Now if you want to progress this, obviously you could get rid of the blanket, that would be one thing, but you can also add the upper extremities. For instance, lifting your hands off the floor will make your upper body heavier. So holding this isometric, if this causes you to shake, to cramp, or to fall out of the position, you might want to eliminate that. And certainly that being said, as we move through some of these positions, we can change the lever lengths. For instance, taking the hands behind the head, or moving the arms even out in front of the body, trying to maintain that spinal position. So for those 8 exercises, coming into first, we did rotation on our back. We did rotation actually sitting up, leaning back. We next went into the flexion exercises where we had the legs up on the chair. We started with the upper body coming off the floor, then the lower body coming up off the floor. Then we move into side bend, first starting flat on our back, moving into side bend, then weight bearing on our side, and finally moving into those extension exercises. First, just dealing with good posture, and secondly, actually practicing those prone backward bends. I hope that this video has helped give you some ideas as to how to go about strengthening your core. And if you do like it, give me a thumbs up and share it with anyone that you know that I can help. Make sure that you're subscribed to this channel so you never miss a video. And if you would like more information about the 5-step cycle of muscle maintenance, being led through these exercises in more of a workout format, as well as how to progress your core all the way into the 5th step of muscle maintenance, take a look at Fitness Integrated Science TV. There's a link below. I would love to have you try out a 7-day free trial and see what it feels like in your body. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.